Hey there, fellow dog lovers. Welcome back to our channel. Today we're sharing a tale that will change the way you look at the quiet moments in your life and the silent love of a good dog. Picture this: a peaceful town in Vermont, a quiet home, and two goofy Labradors. For weeks they stood guard at the windows, their barks echoing through the empty night. I thought they were protecting my home, my family, from a human threat. I thought I knew what a guardian looked like. But I was wrong. The real danger wasn't outside, it was a silent, invisible terror living inside my own house. And the truth about what my dogs were really protecting, well, that was the most chilling plot twist of all. Pine Creek, Vermont wasn't the kind of town you found on a map. It was the kind of town you stumbled upon. A sleepy hamlet tucked into a valley where the air always smelled of pine and the only rush hour was the deer crossing the road at dawn. This was where Marcus Cole, a 30-something graphic designer, had found his little slice of peace. His days were a comfortable rhythm of client calls, the quiet tap of his keyboard, and the company of his two goofy, gold-furred shadows, Buster and Daisy. They were the most stereotypical, lovable Labradors you could imagine. Their tails a constant metronome of happiness, their default setting a gentle floppy-eared snooze in the sun. But that peaceful rhythm shattered the day his niece Lily arrived. She stepped out of her mother's minivan, a small figure swallowed by a bright red jacket. She was 7 years old, but her eyes, wide and guarded, held a weariness that felt far older. She didn't say a word. She just watched the world around her with a quiet, careful intensity. I tried to greet her with a warm smile, but her silence was a physical wall, and all my attempts at small talk bounced right off it. Then the dogs started to change. The first few days, I didn't even notice. It was subtle. Buster, the more laid back of the two, stopped greeting me at the door with his usual dramatic wiggle. He and Daisy were now always by Lily's side, not playing but just watching. They'd lie on the rug at the foot of her bed, one ear cocked, their gazes fixed on nothing I could see. I chalked it up to them just being protective of a new small human. After all, Labradors were famous for their gentle, family-oriented nature. But then things got weirder. The happy-go-lucky tail wags disappeared, replaced by low, resonant growls I'd never heard before. They would go rigid, staring out the window at the empty street or into the trees at the edge of the yard. I remember one evening as I was making dinner, Buster suddenly let out a sharp, territorial bark. I rushed to the window expecting to see a squirrel, a raccoon, anything. But there was nothing. The yard was empty. I scolded him, "What's gotten into you, boy?" He just whined softly and went back to his post beside Lily as if I hadn't understood the gravity of his warning. I became obsessed with figuring out what was going on. Was it a stray fox? Maybe the neighbor's cat. I even considered that a cougar might be roaming the woods. It was a common mistake to look for a physical threat when the real danger was a psychological one. I was so focused on what they were reacting to in the outside world that I completely missed the truth of what they were guarding. The chilling plot twist, the one I didn't see coming, was that the dogs were never protecting Lily from the wilderness. They were protecting her from a silent ghost. A ghost that appeared not with a sound, but with an absence of sound. The night the truth started to reveal itself was one of the coldest of the season. Lily was in her room, and I was in the living room trying to get some work done. It was quiet. Too quiet. Suddenly, both Buster and Daisy, who were lounging peacefully just moments before, shot to their feet. Their ears went back, their bodies went low, and they moved together as a single silent force toward Lily's bedroom. They stood in her doorway, shoulders tense, staring out the window, not at anything in the yard, but at the empty street beyond. And then I saw it. Just a glimpse. A flicker of movement at the very edge of the lamplight at the end of my driveway. Two shadows. Two figures standing perfectly still. My blood ran cold, and the horrifying truth hit me. The dogs weren't reacting to a wild animal. They were reacting to people. And I was about to find out exactly who and why. My heart hammered against my ribs, a panicked drumbeat in the quiet night. I squinted, straining my eyes in the dim streetlight. two figures shrouded in hoodies just standing there unmoving at the end of my driveway. I was about to grab my phone and call the police when they simply turned and walked away. No shattered windows, no spray paint cans, no stolen garden gnomes. Nothing. Just two teenagers disappearing into the blackness of the road. I didn't sleep that night. I was a man who worked with light and color, with clean lines and peaceful designs. My world was built on order, but now a creeping chaos had seeped into it. I started seeing shadows everywhere in my peripheral vision, in the reflection of the window, in the spaces between the trees. The dogs Buster and Daisy were my only allies. They would stay on high alert, their ears swiveling like antennae, their low growls a constant unsettling symphony. They were showing me something, telling me something, and I was too stuck in my own head to understand. I just kept thinking, what do they want? Vandalism? A break-in? I spoke to my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, a sweet old woman with a razor-sharp wit and a memory like a steel trap. "Oh, those boys," she said, shaking her head. "Always a bad seed. Used to cause trouble down by the river. You know, they're not like the bullies from my day. Back then it was a shove in the hallway. Now it's something colder." She gave me a sympathetic look. Her words resonated with me, highlighting a crucial mistake I was making. I was treating this like a simple act of teenage rebellion, a one-off thing. But the dogs knew better. Their behavior wasn't a warning about a quick smash and grab. It was a warning about a slow, systematic campaign of fear. The only way I could calm my nerves was to take action. So the next day, I went out and bought the most high-tech, sensitive security cameras I could find. I mounted them myself, a feeling of grim satisfaction swelling in my chest. Now, I thought, now I'll catch them in the act. I'll get the proof I need, and this nightmare will be over. I sat in front of my computer watching the live feeds, waiting for a sign of their return. And they did return. Just 2 nights later, the cameras showed them again. This time, they didn't walk past. They stood at the property line, half hidden by the shadows of the old maple tree. I zoomed in, my heart pounding with a mix of fury and fear. I waited for the spray paint to come out, for a rock to be thrown through a window. I waited for a crime. But they didn't do anything. They just stood there. One of them pointed at the house, a slow, deliberate gesture. The other one just watched. For what felt like an eternity, they just watched. And then, without a single word or movement of violence, they turned and disappeared back into the darkness. That was it. The footage was useless for the police. It showed no crime, no damage, no threat that I could prove. But what it showed was infinitely more terrifying. It showed that what they were doing wasn't about a fleeting moment of chaos. It was about surveillance. It was about knowing they could be here at any time in the dead of night, just watching. I replayed the footage over and over, trying to make sense of it. And that's when I saw it. The most chilling detail of all. Just as they turned to leave, one of them looked directly at the camera. He raised his hand, not in a wave, but in a slow, almost mocking salute. They knew I was watching. They knew I was afraid. But what they were really watching was the little girl who was silently living in the house. This was never a fight about property. It was a fight for her soul, and my dogs had been sounding the alarm long before I ever even thought to listen. And it was their frantic, protective glances, not the camera footage, that finally led me to the darkest truth. The security camera footage was a dead end, but the silence in my house became a deafening roar. I spent the next few days in a fog of frustration and fear. My mind replayed the unsettling image of those 2 boys just standing there watching. I felt helpless. The law couldn't touch them, and I couldn't protect Lily from a threat I couldn't even prove. I was making a critical mistake, a mistake so many of us make. I was focused on the external enemy, the villains outside the window. I had forgotten that the real battle was happening inside my own home, inside a 7-year-old girl's heart. I had been so busy trying to figure out what the dogs were reacting to that I forgot to ask what they were protecting. The real twist, the one that still gives me chills to this day, came not from a camera or a clue, but from a quiet, mundane afternoon. Lily was sitting on the floor coloring. Buster and Daisy were, of course, right beside her. Buster had his head in her lap, and she was mindlessly stroking his fur, her eyes glazed over, lost in a world of her own. I knelt down beside her, and I didn't ask her about school or her friends. I just looked at her, and then I looked at my dogs. And it hit me with the force of a tidal wave. The way Buster and Daisy watched her wasn't a general protective stance. It was an act of profound empathy. They weren't just guarding the house, they were guarding her fragile, broken silence. They were her emotional bodyguards, standing guard over her pain until she was ready to face it. My voice was a low whisper. "Lily," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "You know Buster and Daisy. They know what's going on. They've been trying to tell me something for a long time. They're not just protecting our home. They've been protecting you." Her small hand stopped moving on Buster's head. Her eyes, so old and sad, met mine for the first time in weeks. I wasn't just talking about the boys outside. I was talking about her. I was validating her fear. I was saying, "I see it, I hear it, and I'm here." Then I made a promise. "They've got you, Lily. They've got you until you're ready. I've got you. You don't ever have to be afraid to say what happened. We'll be here standing guard until you're ready to speak." It was a gentle offering of unconditional love. There was no pressure. No, "Tell me everything now." Just a simple acknowledgement that her silence was a symptom of her pain, not a personal flaw. Her bottom lip trembled. A single tear rolled down her cheek. And then another. She wrapped her small arms around Buster's neck, and finally, for the first time, the broken voice of a traumatized child found its way out. They told everyone that I was a liar," she sobbed, burying her face in the dog's soft fur. They said they were going to get me if I told." The words came out in a torrent of gasps and tears. She told me everything. The whispered threats in the hallway, the malicious texts to her friends, the way they would just stand there watching, making her feel small and trapped. She told me about the fear, a cold, persistent fear that had become her constant companion. She wasn't just afraid of two boys. She was afraid of losing her voice completely. In that moment, a strange kind of peace settled over the room. Buster and Daisy rested their heads on her legs, a silent, comforting weight. Their mission was accomplished. They had guarded her heart until she was strong enough to open it. My mistake had been seeing them as just dogs. Their lesson to me was that true healing doesn't start with a solution, but with a safe space to finally speak your truth. The second Lily's story came out. The dam broke. All the tears, all the fear, all the weeks of bottled-up silence just poured out. I held her tight, Buster and Daisy close beside us, a silent, furry shield. In that moment, the world shrank to just the three of us and her broken voice. But I knew instinctively that this wasn't a problem we could solve alone. My first impulse was rage. I wanted to drive straight to those kids' houses to confront them, to make them understand the terror they had inflicted. But I stopped myself. The dogs had taught me that reacting to the visible threat wasn't the answer. The real issue was the invisible damage left behind. I realized my job now was not to seek revenge, but to build something better. The next day, I didn't go to the police. I went to the school, and I talked to other parents. I didn't just tell them about the security footage. I told them about Lily's silence. I told them about Buster and Daisy and how my dogs, with their pure instincts, had seen a wound that I, a grown man, had missed. The response was a beautiful storm of shared empathy. The parents of other kids, previously unaware of the extent of the problem, were horrified. We were no longer isolated families. We were a community, and our collective silence was a part of the problem. This was the beautiful paradox. The very fear that had isolated Lily was the thing that now brought us all together. We went from being separate houses in a quiet town to a united front. The headmaster was brought in, and the boys' families were confronted. Their parents, who had no idea what their sons were doing, were shocked. The outcome was swift and final, but the real victory wasn't in their punishment. The victory was in our shared commitment to ensure something like this never happened again. And that's where the idea for the Safe Haven was born. It was a simple after-school program where kids could come to talk, to draw, to just be themselves. The special part, Buster and Daisy were there every single day. I told the kids, "You don't have to talk to me, just talk to them." We saw firsthand the power of a non-judgmental ear and a soft, furry head to pet. Kids who were struggling to find the words to describe their own anxieties found they could confide in a dog. Lily, of course, became the unofficial leader. Her recovery wasn't a light switch, it was a gradual journey, but she took the first steps. She helped me create a mural for the program, a bright, colorful painting of all the animals, all the kids, all the safe spaces. She started telling jokes, silly little knock-knocks that made me laugh until my sides hurt. She started sleeping soundly, no longer waking up with a start. The fear was fading, replaced by a quiet, blossoming confidence. The greatest lesson I learned was that true strength isn't just about facing your enemy. It's about finding the courage to rebuild your world after the fight is over. Lily had been a victim of silent fear, but with the help of a community and the unconditional love of her Labrador guardians, she was becoming a survivor. She had been trapped in her own mind, but now her voice, once so broken, was finally free. And the next time a shadow fell on someone's life, we as a community would be ready to step into the light. The boys were gone. The fear was fading. Life in Pine Creek settled into a new, more aware kind of rhythm. And yet the most important characters in this story, the ones who had seen the truth from the very beginning, never truly stopped being guardians. Years have passed since that frightening autumn. Lily is no longer a small child lost in silence. She is a vibrant, confident teenager with a laugh that fills the whole house. But the lesson remains. My Labradors Buster and Daisy are older now. Their golden coats are dusted with gray. Their playful energy has been replaced by a quiet wisdom. They still lie at her feet when she reads or draws, but their vigilance is different. It's no longer born of fear, but of an enduring, peaceful bond. They are a living reminder of the lesson they taught me, that sometimes the most profound communication is nonverbal. I now see the world with new eyes. I pay attention to the silence in a room. I look for the subtle shifts in a friend's smile. I've learned that our animals are often trying to tell us things that we are too busy to hear. They see the hurt we try to hide and the battles we fight in silence. They don't need us to explain our pain. They just sit with us in it, a constant, loving presence. Lily grew up to be a true artist. She recently painted a mural in the town square, a tribute to the community that had helped her heal. In the center of the painting are two golden Labradors standing watch over a group of laughing children. Below them, a single sentence is etched into the stone. They guarded me until I could speak. The dogs never gave her a voice. They just held a safe space for her until she was ready to find it herself. They remind us that the greatest act of love is not to solve someone's problems for them, but to give them the courage to face their own. And sometimes all it takes is a loyal friend with a wagging tail and an ear to listen. If this story touched your heart, please let us know. Have you ever had a pet who seemed to know exactly what you needed, even when you didn't? Tell us your story in the comments below. Your experiences are what make this community so special. If you want to hear more stories like this filled with unexpected heroes and life-changing lessons, be sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in the next story.